Okay, we're going to start a tutorial today where we're going to take a pair of eyes and we're going to make them a little bit surreal by giving them false color that they couldn't possibly have false color. But we're going to try to make it realistic. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up an image. Now I have several sample eye photo images and they are in the digital photography handout and then in the folder called eyes. And you can open any of the eyes that are in there and you can do all of these tutorials. The very first thing we want to do is we want to make sure our environment is set up properly. So just as you may have done, you may have screwed up all of your environment and you may have settings on tools that you may not have may not like. So we're going to go up here to the upper right hand corner, click and hold my Wendy workspace that I have. I'm going to go back and reset my workspace so everything goes back and is where I expect it to be. Then with the tools, it doesn't matter what tool you have selected at the moment. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say not just reset that tool, but reset all the tools. And it'll say, well, do you want to reset them to the default settings? And I sure do. So I'm going to click OK. So now we have no settings that are from a previous tutorial. And that's pretty important because you can really confuse yourself if you have something left over from a previous tutorial. Next thing we're going to need is our gradient to for this project. We're going to need it to show up and it's not going to be here. So we're going to go Window and then Gradients. And when I do, it should open up other things. Now, be aware, it sometimes may open up some other things and you want to just make sure that you come back here. You only want layers and history. So when I'm done with this gradients, I'm going to uncheck that to get rid of that as well. So I'm going to come down here. I need the legacy gradients. And to load that, you're going to click on the hamburger menu, come down to legacy gradients, and now you'll see it'll be there for you. I don't need that anymore, so I can either click on that or I can go here and uncheck gradients. And again, you should only have layers and history in this section here. Options and tools, of course, will be on here. All right, so we're ready to start drawing this shape over top of the eye. So I'm going to come down here to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to come down to the ellipse tool. Now, with the ellipse tool in the options, I'm going to make sure that I'm drawing with a shape. And then the fill, I don't want it to be a black color or a white color. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose the third one over where it says gradient. And I'm going to click on this. I'm going to open up Legacy Gradients. If you cannot see this, it might be shorter. You can pull it bigger. I'm going to toggle open the folder for Legacy Gradients, scroll down again, and again, it's in Legacy Default Gradients, and I'm going to go in here and click and choose this rainbow, it's called Spectrum. It's a rainbow gradient, and then I can go ahead and click off of that. Oops, I don't want that. I just click so that it's out of the way, okay? So now I'm going to draw this. I'm going to click right in the middle of the pupil, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to start drawing. Now when I do, you see how it's not going to line up properly. So while I'm still clicking, I haven't let go, I'm going to hold down the Alt button, And you see now I'm drawing from the center. But I'm going to go one step further, and I'm also going to hold down the Shift. So I'm Alt Shift to drag this. And now not only am I drawing from the center, but I'm also drawing a perfect circle. So when I let this go, it's going to draw what I want. Now, I don't want that, so I'm going to undo what I just did. I can just back up in my history. So I need to also make sure that when I've got this gradient, the next thing I want to do, I want to make sure that I'm not drawing a linear gradient. I want to choose and make it an angle gradient. Okay, so again, I'm going to click in the center. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt, and now I'm drawing that in the center. And it's overlapping the eye a little bit, the color of the eye, but I'm going to fix that in a later step. So I'm going to let go. And when I do, I've created this spectrum over top of the eye. Okay, I might need to grab the move tool and move it around. And if you do need to move it, sometimes it's easier to use the arrow keys on your keyboard so you can move it in a more subtle way. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is and again, you see how the properties opened up, and I don't really need that. I also have a 1 pixel gradient, so I don't want to have a gradient. I'm going to take it down to 0, so there's no line on the outside of that. So again, right here, I made sure that there's no line. Now, I don't need this properties panel open anymore. So again, window, and I'm going to come down and uncheck properties so it gets out of my way. So I see my more simplistic panels. Now, with this layer selected, I'm going to come up to the blend mode where it says normal, and I'm going to come down and change it to color. And you'll see the eye is starting to look a little bit see-through. Now, because it's overlapping the edge of the eye, I need to clean that up. So to do that, in my layers palette, I'm going to come down to the bottom of the layers palette, and I'm going to click on the rectangle with the circle inside, which makes a layer mask. And you'll see I now have the layer with the layer mask attached. The layer mask is active. It has a white line around the outside of it. I'm going to take this layer mask that is white and I'm going to paint black on it. So I need to make sure that black is in my foreground color. I'm going to switch to the paintbrush tool. And then my brush, I want to make sure that I have it. See how tiny it is? I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see how, I'm just waving my mouse over here so I can see how big it is. But I want to make sure that it has a 100% hard edge. And what that does is it gives a nice crisp hard edge to it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click back on that so that it gets out of the way. And now I'm going to be painting black right on the edge of that eyelid to crisp up the edges. And again, if you look what I'm doing here, right there, I'm creating black on that white layer. So I'm going to come down here and paint a little bit down here. And I'm going to come and sometimes it's easier to just do it in short little increments so that you're not painting too much at a time. So you're going to paint right around that edge so that I'm getting a crisper, more believable edge. Okay, so once you get it where you think that it is looking more believable, I want to make sure that the eyelashes are, and you can adjust your brush size if you need to make it fit a little bit better. So that's looking pretty good. And so you can see I have one eye adjusted. You can always come up to the opacity and lighten that a little bit if you think it's looking a little bit too bright. But right now I'm going to keep mine at 100%. You can decide. So now I've got one more eye to do. So I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to come over here in my layers palette. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool. I'm going to click in the middle of the iris, the pupil, and I'm going to hold Alt, Shift, and drag to make my perfect circle. I'm going to make sure that I have no stroke, and I'm going to close that properties panel. I will change the blend mode to color, create a layer mask, and then again switch to my brush tool, and my brush tool should still have the same settings I had before. It does. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to clean up that layer. And I didn't change the blend mode. Yeah, I did change the blend mode. It's just looking pretty harsh right now. I'm going to come in here very carefully, select that. If you mess up, you can always back up in your steps. Remember the undo feature. That's the best feature I think the computer has, is an edit undo. And clean that up. And I may have I'm going to back up a little bit because I think I grabbed a little bit too much of that one. It's better to do smaller, shorter strokes because then you don't have to back up so much. So now I've got this, and again, I think that those layers, I think I might like to lower the opacity of those just a little bit. So I'm going to take it down to about 80%, and I'm going to do this one. Let's see, I put it at 79 technically, so I'll put the other one at 79. And so now we have some eyes that are kind of looking a little surreal. And that's what you're going to be doing for your project today. You're going to be taking a photograph and you're going to be changing the eye color. And by the way, you don't have to have a spectrum. You can change them to different eye color as well. I mean, you can really change it to just about any gradient you want or any fill you want. Probably a gradient's going to make it look more realistic.